This week on Full Circle Florida, the Rays sold. Rock Riley joins me here with the past, the present, and the future of the team. Are they now Tampa bound? And the AI-powered school debuting in Tampa later this year. Is it a virtual classroom or a real campus? And could it redefine education? Plus, the Trump economy, the tariff squeeze on Main Street, and whose data do you really believe? And hope amid the headlines these days. Dr. Susan McManus on America's Bright Side. What's right in the USA? Well, the Tampa Bay Rays just got sold for $1.7 billion. So what's next? Rock Riley, host of the sports podcast The Rock Stops Here, joins me to unpack the deal's game-changing impact on the team's future. So a lot of news happening with the Rays. I'm curious how you think this ownership change will alter the immediate challenges of the team, especially with the Trop field lease dragging on. These guys, they just dropped $1.7 billion to buy the team. Does that give them the war chest that they need or the firepower to tackle a $1.5 billion stadium project right away? Or is it likely we're going to be pinching pennies and this team spends the next decade in the Trop that's about to be fixed up by the city of St. Petersburg?
You know what, Paul? That is a very good question. All I can tell you is what I liked about this approval by the Major League Baseball owners, it was a unanimous approval. They go over the records, the financials of the new prospective ownership group with a fine-tooth comb. They're not going to let them come into Major League Baseball and then have the same situation that we had under Stu Sternberg with a low payroll, pinching pennies. So you never know until new ownership comes in. They can say all the right things. But the fact that Major League Baseball knows this is a growing market, did not want to see Major League Baseball leave this market, and then to unanimously approve the new ownership group, that's got to make you feel good that their financials are in order, because you're right. Not only are they owning a team, but they've also got to build a new stadium.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you pointed out, because it does seem to underscore the commitment that not only Commissioner Manfred, who said out loud several times he wants baseball in the Tampa Bay region, but all of the owners also underlying their commitment to this market. Stu Sternberg, he owned the Rays for nearly 2 decades. What do you think his ultimate legacy will be in your eyes? Is he the visionary who squeezed wins out of a shoestring budget and really sort of developed a new way of winning in Major League Baseball that other teams tried to implement? Or is he a guy who underinvested and left the fan base hanging? Does he get too much credit or too much blame?
I was thinking about this, Paul, and the last home series the Rays had at Steinbrenner Field, I don't know how many of you saw the footage, but owner Stu Sternberg was down on the field. They put up a tribute video on the big scoreboard in center field. They even had hats made, Stu hats. And the crowd that was there gave him a standing ovation, and he was blowing kisses. But you've got to remember, those are the diehards that paid for a ticket to sit in 100-degree weather. They just were so happy that Major League Baseball is going to stay. There are 2 ways to look at Stu Sternberg. Same thing when Vince DeMoli brought Major League Baseball to Tampa Bay. He got it done. But once he was the owner, he wasn't good with public relations. There were businesses that weren't happy, and so there had to be a move made. Stu came in with his buddies from Wall Street. Right away, it was better. They went from the lowly Devil Rays, last place, to the first place Rays. So on the field, you've got to give him credit because he put a winner on the field. But then, after 2 decades not being able to get a new stadium done, Major League Baseball said, hey, this is a growing market. You still don't have a new stadium? So they push him out. So, yes, he turned the culture around and put a winner on the field, but Major League Baseball said, we got to have a change. So now it's going to be new owners come in. I'm sure there's going to be excitement, but still to be determined what kind of owners they're going to be.
Yeah, you'd like to have your cake and eat it too. You'd like a new stadium and a winning team. You could say what you will about Stu Sternberg, but he did not produce a perennial loser. He produced a perennial winner, even though he fell short on the stadium deal. And that takes two to tango, obviously. It's the city and the team as well. But, you know, this has got to be one of the most challenging, frustrating teams to own in baseball, because immediately your priority should be to try to get some kind of new stadium deal. That's going to be the expectation for the fans, but you have to wonder eventually, will we ever become the team that actively goes after those high value free agents instead of constantly having to squeeze blood out of a rock every year and develop talent? Even though that has worked, you know, you'd like to see a strategy where the Rays can go shopping every now and then for a new car like a Juan Soto or a Cody Bellinger. Do you think we could get to that point?
I hope so. I hope so. Look, this is the 11th TV market in the country. It has now surpassed Miami. We are the biggest in the state of Florida. Major League Baseball understands that. It's still not a New York where you draw from the tri-state area. It still isn't LA and the TV contracts and the amount of revenue that they have coming in. But I will tell you this. I think you start, Paul, instead of always thinking, well, maybe we can get the big Juan Soto or the big name free agent that's going to cost you now probably $1 billion. How about signing the young talent that are good, like a Junior Caminero, who's only 22 years old? He is under a one-year deal for $700,000. If it were me, and they've said that they want to put the revenues back into payroll, so that would be a start. Start there. Look at what the Buccaneers have done. Antoine Winfield, highest paid safety. A Tristan Wirfs, they give him a contract at the time, highest paid tackle. Re-sign Baker Mayfield. Sign your good players, because a lot of times, Paul, you're paying for guys that have done so well and they'll never be as good. I would say start there. They've said that. We'll see if they can stick to that.
Yeah, develop your diamonds and then keep them. That would be a smart strategy. Either way, it is the beginning of a new era. Rock Riley, thank you for your insight. As always, always great having you on. Next on Full Circle Florida, we know what's wrong with this country, but what about what is right? Okay, let's bring in Dr. Susan McManus in here to put some perspective on these times that we're all living in. And I want to do something we normally don't do. I mean, every week we do a show where we talk about the challenges and the problems, so I'm not going to be Pollyannish about this, but I do want to start with talking about what's right with America. I'll just, tick off a few things. Economic strength, low unemployment relative to years past. The current rate, 4.3. In 2010, it was 9.6. In the 90s, everyone thought about the booming 90s. 5.7 was the average. In the 80s, 5.3. 8 of the world's top 10 companies headquartered in America: NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, the list goes on. We dominate in technology. We're on the cusp of a revolution with AI, so the sky's not even the limit with opportunity there. Medical advances, once fatal illnesses like AIDS, hepatitis C, certain forms of leukemia, now treatable. Yes, cancer rates are up, but we're also screening more. We're catching it earlier. I could go on. And yes, even free speech. We had this giant argument in this country last week about free speech and whether you can speak your mind. Jimmy Kimmel's back on the air. He's making fun of the president again. His ratings are higher than they've ever been. No one's in jail. No one got fired. So it all kind of worked out. So why are we fighting so much? Why are we so divided?
It's for a number of reasons. At the top of the list is that a lot of people that watch political news and news carefully, all they see is the negative, time in and time out. And if an outlet is going to do a nice story, it's always at the end in 2 or 3 seconds, it seems like. So there's not a balance that gives people any real reason to think that things are better than what they look like. So that's number one. Number two is technology and social media. We well know that the algorithms, I can program it such that if you're on a website that you enjoy, and I'm a business or whatever, I can probably direct something your way, and you get this day in and day out. People on social media see things as either this or that and no in between.
Well, this thing can be a tool, but it can also distort reality. I mean, especially if you're just scrolling just hours on end. I mean, what you think is happening, it turns into this all-encompassing thing that kind of drowns everything out.
Yeah, we don't have trust anymore in any of our institutions, and we really don't have a lot of trust in how we're receiving political news.
I want to leave it with this. It was kind of the premise of this. It ain't all bad, right? I mean,
no, the great news is we know we have a problem, and when you identify a problem, it's much easier to look at the causes, identify them, and then work for solutions.
All right, Dr. McManus, thank you very much for being here. Tampa's new AI-powered school, speaking of artificial intelligence, is it a real campus or virtual, real teachers or robots? How much will it cost? We'll get into that next. Welcome back to Full Circle, Florida. An AI-powered school is going to debut in Tampa. It's set to open this winter, and at a cost of $40,000 a year, it is supposed to be a lot more than just a private version of homeschool. So what is it exactly? Well, I sat down with Catherine Varn from Axios, Tampa Bay. What is the typical day at the Alpha School like? Do you actually go to a physical campus, or is this sort of a private version of homeschooling?
Yeah, so there is actually a physical campus. When I checked in with the Alpha folks a couple weeks ago, they did not yet have a location. They hadn't finalized the location yet, but there will be a campus, and campuses have opened elsewhere. And so, yeah, it's set to open. The Tampa campus is set to open this winter. And then for founding families, so sort of the, first class of students, and then full enrollment is expected next year. As far as like what a day looks like, it's pretty open. They get 60 to 90 students, it's K through 8 students get 60 to 90 minutes of outdoor play, 2 hours of personalized learning, and then development of life skills like entrepreneurship, grit, things like that.
And is that through projects? Because I understood that they're claiming that they can get through an academic year much shorter than a typical school, something like 80, 90 days, and that then a big part of their day or their cycle is doing these sort of independent projects like, running a lemonade stand and knowing what it's like to run a business, and sort of this independent kind of way of educating oneself based on not just the content that's being taught, but almost, it sounds like a little bit of trial and error and applying what you know in a real world scenario. So that would seem to indicate yes, there's AI involved, but also sort of a real world application as well.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. It seems like life skills are like a big part of their, what they're trying to teach kids. There's also, practical skills like financial literacy, public speaking.
How does artificial intelligence fit in to the day-to-day? I mean, so I know that there are these things called guides that apparently that's the human element to help guide the students. So it's not like it's devoid of human interaction, but the actual artificial intelligence that's powering the school, what exactly does that mean?
There's an AI tutor who helps students along in their lessons. I say who, but obviously AI is not a who, it's a technology.
Right.
But I think that's an interesting component of AI is how it almost feels like a person when you're talking to it, although it has a lot of errors and shortcomings still as the technology is still being developed. But yeah, there's an AI tutor who helps students along with their lessons, and then yes, there are these guides that are sort of the teachers per se, but they don't create lesson plans or lectures. They're more like coaches who work to motivate students and come from a range of backgrounds.
And is this a potential model for the future of education, be it private or public? It's a fascinating discussion. Catherine Varn with Axios. We move next here to the big squeeze on Main Street. Rising costs and the tariffs putting a pinch on the bottom line. Here's my conversation this week with small business strategist Rahil Malik with the First Gen Agency. Rahil, thank you for joining us. You know, you get so much economic data thrown at you, and I think it's hard for a lot of folks to make sense of this. I'm in the business of news, and I'll be honest with you, I read so much information that sometimes I have to even take time to kind of sort through it all. Bottom line, are the tariffs taking a toll on hiring, particularly among small businesses?
Certainly, Paul. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. You know, the question of whether tariffs are taking a toll on hiring, I have to unfortunately say the answer is yes. You know, every dollar that's spent on a tariff or at the customs, bureau or department, is it $1 less for hiring that new employee, hiring that new factory worker, hiring that, person, and it's taking away from that. In the technology sector and in small business where I consult, we're seeing a tremendous decline in innovation and technology because it's so expensive to build or manufacture now anywhere, right? It was already expensive to build here in America, even though we all want to buy made in America. It's not cost effective for a lot of us. And now with the tariffs, it's even more expensive to build abroad. So we've seen a downturn in the manufacturing and hardware innovation space, and we've seen an uptick in AI, right? In the technology side. I promise you, the Metas and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world are trying to figure out how to replace, their workforce and talent with, AI agents. I'll give you an example. My wife happens to work for one of the largest banks in the world, and they have an internal AI system similar to ChatGPT that is proprietary and built just for them, that they are encouraged to use on a day-to-day basis to, maximize their productivity. And I always tell my wife, I was like, you're training this thing to put you out of a job one day. And she goes, yeah, that's fine. It'll be later. Because it makes my life easier now.
The other suspicion that people have, Rahil, is that, that the information itself, is it accurate? Is it biased? Has it been politicized? And how do you make sense of that?
Great question. And it's tough these days, right? Sifting through the noise. What's real, what's not, what's leaning one way or left or right. I'm of the viewpoint that, the Bank of America's, the JP Morgans, the Wells Fargos of the world are in the business of business, and they report to their shareholders and their customers, and they have no agenda other than to maximize their profits. So the data that they're putting out and analyzing and seeing, I believe to be accurate. Now, if it comes from the government, it could go another way, regardless of administration. But when you're thinking about the organizations putting this data out, and then not only that, but we've also got, the National Small Business Association, the NFIB, kind of ringing the alarm, so to speak, or being that canary in the coal mine and saying, look, we are the governing body of small businesses in America, and we are telling you there is a slowdown. You have to look at the why a lot of times, right? So why would they say that? There's no political gain there. Nobody's voting for these people, right? So I have to believe, and we have the largest, most trusted financial institutions on the planet that the world has ever seen. I think in these situations, we really do have to believe them and, imagine them as the canary in the coal mine. Okay,
so for the person at home hearing this and just trying to budget their family week to week and month to month, what do you think long-term solutions, short-term solutions? How do you ride this out?
Yeah, we're all in it, right? Regardless of your income bracket, I've got a new 9-month-old baby. I guess she's not so new anymore. And, as first-time parents, thank you so much. As first-time parents, we're trying to figure it out too. I'll tell you where we lean in is the Costco, right? And buying in bulk and trying to maximize, everything we can do at home. In technology, we have a saying, good or bad, it's do more with less. Yeah. So I think we're all feeling that right now and that doing the best we can. Yeah, you got to be your own CEO, which you are. Rahil Malik, thank you, CEO of First Gen Agency and producer of Code Launch. Thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Full Circle Florida continues right after this. Thanks for watching us here on Full Circle Florida. We hope you'll join us again here next week. Have a great week, everyone.